Hello, and welcome to day one of InnoFest. Thank you for joining us in today's ICE 71 panel, Beyond the Hype, Securing the Metaverse. I'm Linda Nguyen Schindler, Program Head of ICE 71, which stands for Innovation Cybersecurity Ecosystem at Block 71 in Singapore. Founded by NUS Enterprise and Singtel Innovate, we are the region's first cybersecurity entrepreneur hub. And now I'd like to introduce the moderator of our panel discussion, Ms. Winthia Goh, Senior Partner at NCS Next, the digital services arm of NCS. She has previously led regional digital teams for companies such as Aviva, SAP, eBay, and Nokia, and currently leads NCS digital teams across Asia in digital services, data science, cloud, and platforms to help customers innovate and harness the right technologies in their digital and business transformation. So please help me welcome Winthia.
Is this working? Okay, thank you. Okay, I guess the topic, Metaverse, is popular today. So very happy to be here moderating this panel. Let me first introduce you to members on the panel. First, we have Dr. Gao. Dr. Gao is the Assistant Group Chief Digital Officer for the National University Health System. He spearheads various projects, including the development of hollow medicine, mixed reality devices, and their application for medical education and clinical medicine. He's also the Vice Chair and Director of Science, Medicine, and Technology for the Hollow Medicine Association, an international body that aims to bring together expertise from around the world to advance the science of mixed reality and its application in medicine. Welcome, Dr. Gao. Next, we have Winston. Winston is the youngest on the panel, but probably the one with the longest experience in Metaverse. Winston is the co-founder and CEO of Finute, an award-winning Metaverse technology company that develops immersive virtual experiences. As the CEO, he has worked with MNCs, SMEs, and government agencies to bring their ideas to life in the metaverse, and his work has won several global and national innovation competitions. Welcome, Winston. And next, we have Dr. Carter. Dr. Carter is the Associate Professor for the NUS School of Computing. He's the Director for the NUS Ripple FinTech Lab and Co-Director of the Crystal Center. As an educator, he teaches business leaders in the Advanced School of Computing, as well as the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And prior to joining the university, he worked as a consultant for Estee Lauder companies and Accenture. He's also the author of Actionable Intelligence, an Amazon bestseller on data-driven decision-making for business leaders. Welcome, Dr. Carter. And finally, we have Pankit. He's the co-founder and CEO of SecureTech. It's a cybersecurity company that is empowering enterprises with AI-based solutions. They are an I-71 startup, and Pankit himself is a veteran of the IT industry with over 25 years of experience helping global companies around security and AI solutions. Now, looking at the topic, securing the metaverse, when I think about securing the metaverse, I think of it at least in two possible ways. One, how can all of us, knowing the opportunities, potential opportunities in the metaverse, how can we secure the metaverse for ourselves as individuals, organizations and businesses, and for society? Now, there's another aspect that's about literally securing the metaverse, the security, the risk, and the more technological aspects of metaverse. But before we jump into that, first of all, what is your definition of the metaverse? Is it something that exists today? Is it a future we can anticipate? What is your definition of the metaverse? And what do people get wrong? What are the common misconceptions of the metaverse that we should know? Who would like to start?
Hi everyone. So my definition of the metaverse, it is a shared digital space, usually 3D, in three-dimensional form, where people actually come together and actually do certain things. So actually, if you see behind me, there's actually a few photos. So actually, this one is actually of Roblox, and I actually grew up on Roblox like 10 years ago when I first started playing Roblox. And as you can see, there are many different worlds. Like you can see these guys wearing different clothes, there's someone's running away from the police, from a prison. This is called Jailbreak. It's a game. Yeah. So as you can see, there are many different digital avatars, and what you can do in the metaverse is you can be this digital avatar. You can customize your own character, and make friends and socialize and do so much more. So the metaverse is something that's quite endless, and I think you all should be a part of it.
Perhaps I'll go next. So, for myself, I come from the healthcare perspective. So, to us, metaverse, what I think it means is that it's creating an ecosystem where we have, more connected healthcare. When it comes to IoT, IoMTs, robotics, patient sensors, cloud computing, it's about breaking down barriers and closing the distance between physicians, patients, as well as breaking down all the traditional borders that we have in healthcare, and creating a sensible and usable and applicable ecosystem that allows for a secure data transfer, that allows for a sharing of information. And at the end of the day, it's about bringing better patient care to the next patient that walks through the hospital door. And that's kind of what, to me, I feel that the metaverse is to the healthcare sector. Thank you.
I see the metaverse in a strange lens. There's a world now that we can have complete abundance. You need another piece of land, another few pixels. You need another handbag, great, let's just copy it. But yet all of a sudden we have this economy where we're saying it should be scarcity. We should charge you for the piece of land. We should charge you for the next device that you might want to own in that. So it's a bit of a strange situation right now where commercialization is coming to a time when everything almost should be free. But what the metaverse could enable is what we kind of enjoy here, a middle ground between Zoom, where we were all just a 2D screen, and if I turned to my right or my left, I couldn't interact. Whereas when the next pandemic, as Bill Gates says, is coming, we will be able to hop into the metaverse and maybe be able to interact a little bit more than what had happened in Zoom so far. But that also means that, as Dr. Gao said, maybe more education opportunities where we're able to communicate and talk to people from anywhere around the world. And that opens up a wonderful door of opportunity for us to connect. And there's also some interesting new challenges in how we interact.
Yeah, so talking about commercialization, if you were to buy a piece of real estate next to Snoop Dogg, it's taking about $500,000. So that's the price that you pay for being on Metaverse. But leaving that aside, for me, Metaverse is the ability of transcending that one-to-many. The ability to reach places that were never reachable hitherto, right? So someone spoke about gaming, doctor spoke about medicine, education, travel, tourism, government services. There's a problem of, let's say, if you were to take a government service in a developing economy, there's a huge queue that just prohibits people from reaching out and getting the problem solved. Same thing as far as telemedicine is concerned. One thing that COVID got us going was the ability to access services and some amount of products online. To me, Metaverse will take it to a very different level where instead of it being in a 2D dimension as what Carter just spoke about, it will be multidimensional, allowing you to have that immersive experience somewhere in between physical and digital.
So the thing is, virtual worlds are not new, right? Second Life has been around since 2003. So what is different this time? Why are virtual communities more likely to be successful this time? Will they be more successful? Winston, what do you think?
All right, so I'll go first. Virtual worlds are definitely not a new concept. So there are different metaverses out there that has been here for a very long time. So one of them is like Second Life and also Minecraft and also Roblox. So for this kind of metaverses, it is what we would generally describe as a centralized metaverse, where a central entity actually controls the entire metaverse, like a company. Whereas now we see the rise of decentralized metaverses, where DeFi and the concept of using DAOs, decentralized autonomous organizations, to actually create this metaverse. And I think it's more exciting as the metaverse now is seeing a rise in play to earn games in the metaverse, and that's something that you cannot do in a centralized metaverse. So I think it is a interesting space, especially with the rise of decentralization, and I think this will be here to stay.
Keith, what do you think?
The way I see this growth of metaverse and the opportunity is, number one, we've got a lot more infrastructure than back 20 years ago when Second Life was around. Back then, very few people had fiber to their home, whereas here in Singapore, everyone has fiber, right? And I think that where governments have been able to have a very strong IT policy to allow the citizenry to be able to access the resources they need, the metaverse is going to be able to expand and be part of our lives, maybe even transform education. What I love about sitting next to Winston here is that he's an example of a maker, a young person who's come in and not just consuming information and games and what have you, but actually developing in it. So it makes me wonder, as we look at this, where does it fit in education? Do we begin to teach students right away, hey, this is how you develop new worlds in the metaverse today, or programming, or automation, or so many of the booths that are here, and they can learn because Winston can go and have a classroom in Roblox or some of the other things that they are already on, and then they'll go and learn. I think that's an amazing opportunity for the metaverse today.
So when we talk about these innovations that enable the metaverse, decentralization, and so on, are there barriers to adoption? Are there additional areas of risk that, for example, has opened up as we make use of new technology, or the combination of existing or combination of technology to enable the metaverse? Punky, what do you think?
So in my mind, there are two barriers. One is the access to technology in terms of bandwidth, cost of devices. There is this whole issue around about 40% of the world today not having access to internet at all. And there is about another 20% on top of the 40% that is not broadband connected. So for someone to be able to use this technology, there is a part of the world that's not going to be able to use it for a foreseeable future. That's one problem. Second is from a security point of view. Metaverse today is an aggregation of a bunch of technologies from AR, VR, NLP, AI, 3D rendering. Bunch of these have come together, and a lot have been around for quite some time. So my worry here is that these technologies were built at different points in time by different sets of people without an understanding of what their end use is going to be from a metaverse point of view. And there is one huge risk in security, it's called supply chain risk, where the constituents of what you use create an overall problem for you in terms of how the end outcome gets consumed. And to me, the security risk is a big risk that is sitting out there. For example, let's say you were to do a metaverse, if you're a law firm and you create your own metaverse and you think that you're now going to have a conversation with your client in a metaverse. Think about there used to be a man in the middle attack from a cybersecurity perspective that's transformed to a man in the room attack. Imagine now someone is physically sitting in that room, or rather hybridly sitting in the room, listening to your conversation as you are having it. So the entire attorney-client privilege goes for a toss. That may happen because you have these devices that could be mimicked. Someone else can come and take in their place. So there is issues that need to be figured out from a security perspective as far as metaverse is concerned, beyond just that access is what I just spoke about earlier.
When you think about how we may be using metaverse across different sectors and industries, that security becomes a very, a very pervasive concern that everybody needs to be aware of. And you mentioned men in the room. And earlier, Dr. Ka, when we were chatting, you had talked to me a story about Star Wars and the Council of the Jedi. So, Dr. Ka, do you want to tell us a bit more about holo medicine? What are some of what's the relevance of metaverse to medicine?
All right, thanks, Vinthia. So, holomedicine is a term that we coined where it combines the word hologram and medicine. And essentially what it does, what it means is that we are using augmented reality or mixed reality technology to enhance our day-to-day clinical practice and also to bring some new capabilities that we have never had before. So just to add on to virtual reality and the whole metaverse and healthcare, the thing is, virtual reality is not a new area in healthcare. We have been using it for the last 20, 30 years, but it has always been at the education application. So we use it to train medical students, we use it to train surgical trainees, junior doctors, but it has never actually translated to clinical use, meaning that, so I'm a specialist in liver and pancreas surgery. I can't use, for example, a virtual reality headset while I'm operating because I can't see what's on the outside. So what HoloMedicine does is to try and create capabilities for us to use not just in the classroom, but also in real-world settings, in patient-fronting applications, in clinician-fronting applications, and to see how we can actually translate some of the research and development that's been going on for the last 20, 30 years and bring it to actual patient benefit and patient care. So the photos that you see here, these are from my institute, the National University Health System. So we have a program called the HoloMedicine program at the NUHS, where we explore the use of mixed reality or extended reality technology in healthcare and extends a spectrum from surgical education, undergraduate training education, all the way to clinical application, and even its use in the operating theater. So what we are trying to essentially replicate is that, like what Winthia said, for those of you who has watched Star Wars, you will know the Jedi Council, and you remember that you have different characters from different planetary systems appearing as holograms. Right, so that's what we are trying to achieve and what we're trying to work towards when it comes to the healthcare metaverse. So it means that you don't have to be at the same physical location, you don't have to be at the same time zone, but with technologies like 3D mapping, point cloud, cloud processing, and devices like the mixed reality device, we use the HoloLens 2 from Microsoft, right? You can, what we will call holoport, right? Someone from one location to another location, and you appear in real time as a hologram. And capabilities and technologies like this didn't exist in the past, but now you have the ability to bring in experts to underdeveloped countries, underdeveloped institutes, traditional areas where they have no access to world-class medical therapy and world-class medical treatment. And now you don't actually have to fly them in physically. You can teleport them in as a hologram in real time, and this is how they can communicate and how they can break down barriers and bring the overall healthcare community closer together. And this is, I think, what we are trying to achieve as a HoloMedicine platform, not just the technical and the software hardware developments when it comes to technology, but the overall goal of making healthcare accessible to anyone on earth. Yeah.
How far away are we from, the picture that you have painted?
Right, so I wouldn't say that we are that far away. So the pictures you see here, these are actual use cases and applications we have done in the hospital and in the university itself. The healthcare metaverse is something that's in development, right? There are certain things that we can do at this point in time. Like, for example, we can, in a way, holoport someone from one location to another. So it's something that we use quite routinely in the hospital where, for example, if we want to have a discussion with an international panel, we have had sessions between Singapore, Japan, India, where we use the HoloLens to look at holographic renderings of patients' CT scans, MRI scans, and we have a whole expert panel discussion just using a three-dimensional hologram, and everyone sort of sees each other as holographic avatars through the device itself, right? So these are things that we can already do today, right? But the vision of a real-time holographic representation of a person, for example, if let's say we have an expert who's sitting here beside me as a hologram, right? For them to talk to us in real time and to mimic the body language, the facial expressions and things like that, that is something that we still need to work towards. I think the technology at this point in time is probably not mature enough for something like that to happen, but in the next couple of years' time, I think that's where we're going to be headed.
So moving out of healthcare, if I can check with the rest of the panel, what kind of benefits, what kind of services do you think individuals, organizations, society at large can expect as Metaverse matures and become more widely adopted?
We'll be able to create even more jobs than we've had before. Any time in human history that new technology is developed, there's been more population and many more jobs. And so Metaverse lets us play in this world, this set of games here. One thing I can finally explain to my wife if she sees me, I'm doing work, honey. I'm not just playing a game, but part of that is architecture, design, being able to develop new coursework as well, like the medical coursework or architecture or school of design or etc. The entire university can be in an environment like this. And it creates an interesting opportunity. A student in MIT can attend his class at 9 in the morning at MIT and then come over to our class at NUS and do that teleportation in that way and look about and be able to connect with each other. But that experience requires us to think about a few things. Number one, they now have an interesting mixed degree, mixing between MIT, NUS, and other schools. Number two is we have different laws and different societal norms. So what jurisdiction am I in, and under what legal framework am I acting? In the US, students can behave in a certain way, and in Singapore, students can behave in a different way. And so what does that student need to be accountable for? And how does a professor looking at a class of 300,000 students figure out who's acting or not? And so that introduces a whole new set of security rules and requirements, legal frameworks, and more. We have a tremendous opportunity to play right now and to develop new jobs for the future.
What about you, Winston?
Personally, I feel that with the metaverse getting more and more adopted and popular, definitely there will be more and more businesses going to the metaverse and actually advertising and showcasing their solutions and products in a more tactile and actually immersive manner. So currently, like for example, if you want to buy a product, you see ads on websites. They're just static 2D images, but inside the metaverse, you can actually see like for example, you can actually wear the shirt on your avatar. You can actually wear the shoes on your avatar. You can actually, even like test drive a car in the metaverse just for the fun of it. So, there's actually many things that you can come out of this. And I can see this being a very good marketing opportunity for many different companies who want to join into the metaverse. So, I'm not sure if you guys have seen, but there were metaverses in there was a launch in Decentraland by JP Morgan. I think it was at the start of this year. And in the experience, people were able to actually talk and engage with each other and actually learn more about, the various offerings that bank actually had to offer. And another thing that I can see out of the metaverse is actually also education-wise. So in the field of education, the metaverse can actually create something. A metaverse can be a digital world for people to actually interact and actually learn. So for example, for educational institutions where, let's just say, let me rephrase that. Let's just say you want to teach financial literacy. You can actually create a digital virtual world for people to actually, purchase items, clothes, etc. Actually able to track your spending in this digital space, which is something that traditionally you can't achieve in real life through financial literacy board games, etc. So the metaverse gives immersiveness to the users and also to the people inside the metaverse, and that's something that is quite unique to the metaverse, which is the immersiveness and the tactile feeling that you cannot achieve in the real world.
So when we talk about financial literacy, if we start to bring or go through the metaverse to engage with society and individuals on very, very important services, then one question I have is about accessibility, right? Does metaverse increase or decrease access? Does metaverse result in new forms of digital divides? Do you think that is a possibility? Is there an outcome that we should anticipate? And then how should organizations and societies think about that and respond to that?
Yes, I did speak about the digital divide from an access perspective. At this point of time, in my personal opinion, it is a bit of a cultist and an elitist frame, and that's how any new technology starts as. The mainstreaming is what allows it to take it to a different level. And I always was saying, this is a single biggest reason why internet is accessible in the world today. Nothing changed it but a 3G and access to smartphone, which were cheap. And I was just joking outside, if there was a $10, and Keith mentioned $10 Ray-Ban, maybe that's what you will need as a $10 VR glass, which allows you to have that access on a 5G network, which is accessible, and what Elon Musk is doing with satellites, which reduces, or satellite internet, which reduces the need to set up an infrastructure. So I can't put fiber optic all through in Africa, but maybe through satellite, I can, as an example, what I recollect, they were able to get in Ukraine internet up and running, and I think in a few hours, if I'm not mistaken. I think the original tweet from the minister was, I think, 8 in the morning, and I think 12 or 10 in the night, Elon Musk tweeted back saying that the internet is up. So, think about it, a country like Ukraine, they were able to get it up. So that's the power. So make it accessible, that gets it to a level, but at this point of time, it is not mainstream.
So it looks like Metaverse, and I think I've definitely heard Metaverse very often mentioned as the next generation of the internet. If we look at whether you call it Web 1.0, 2.0, you call it the different ways, it seems quite true that with every wave there has been a change of winners and losers. New companies have become dominant, and today we continue to see in Web 2.0 certain global internet companies that is very dominating in terms of the services that they provide all of us. So if Metaverse is the next generation, who is well positioned to win? And what about young companies, startups, and what is the role that they can play, and how can they be positioned to be a winner as Metaverse adoption continues?
Well, McKinsey mentions that by 2030, the metaverse will represent a $1.5 trillion opportunity. I think that's a very low and conservative number, actually. Instead, what we're going to see is an opportunity for the winners in this to be designers, content providers, artists, but also people and businesses that think a little bit further. Like what Winston had said, kids are going to go and buy that Gucci bag, but it'll cost $1 in the metaverse, so they can afford it. But when they graduate from school, they'll say, hey, this is my brand. I'm familiar with that. And that's why Gucci tied up with Roblox to introduce kids into high fashion, which I think is a little bit scary, to be honest with you. But this is what's happening. Companies that are trying and experimenting now are the ones that will have the most likely chance to capitalize on this in the future.
Winston, what do you think?
I think to add on to Prof. Carter's point, I actually agree that this is becoming a trend for people to actually market their services, like for example in Roblox, to the younger generation, so that once they grow up, they'll remember that, oh, this brand does this, and oh, this brand does that. So there will definitely be bigger players in this scene when the time comes. But for startups, it is a good opportunity to be part of the metaverse, as you don't have to be a big company to actually even join the metaverse. You can be a small player. But what you need is actually the will to actually be part of the metaverse. So to link back to what Prof. Carter said about the $1 trillion opportunity, I definitely agree that that number is rather understated. And it's actually a huge opportunity. And I really believe that this metaverse idea will be here to stay. Yeah.
You know, as we are talking about the different services, high fashion brands marketing to kids, companies being able to do better marketing of their services, it brings to mind what we have seen with Web 2.0. With the companies, and what I think many of us now recognize that all of the internet adoption may not have only positive effects, that can also be negative social effects, such as with mental health, with security, with data privacy. So if we look at the metaverse, how can us, individuals, organizations, and society, knowing what we know now, how can we do better with the metaverse? And how can we learn from some of the missteps that maybe we have seen in the current wave of the internet development? What are your thoughts? What do all of us, organizations and society, need to do with the metaverse to get it right and get it better? Would anyone like to try?
Sure. So the big tech, in my opinion, was quite naive in not being able to understand the impact of the technology that they had created. So it's almost like hindsight 2020. If I was to give them a carte blanche in a way, but having learned from it, a few things that we can do now that Metaverse is in, it's going to be mainstream, and that's where the world is likely to be headed. The first and foremost is the option to opt out. The problem with the big tech today is it's a take it or leave it. If I want to use Google Maps, there is no way I can turn off the privacy settings. They will have to track me. There's no other option. If I have to use Facebook, the laundry list is very, very long of what they do. I don't understand, but I can't say accept none and still be able to use Facebook, right? If there is a price point attached to that for me to be able to use it, then that has to be made available. So I think first and foremost is the ability to understand what you are collecting, the impact thereof, and the ability to opt out. Second, I was joking outside, is that like in all Hollywood movies, the cops somehow turn up the last after everything is done and dusted. In this case, the regulators need to wake up much earlier and then figure out the way to understand what it is instead of reacting, be partner of that ecosystem to kind of guide them through the process of what this technology can and cannot do and put it to a greater use.
If I may just chime in a little bit here. So I think a lot of it's about looking at how we can have a positive spin on how to introduce the metaverse into our day-to-day lives. So I mean, again, drawing on the healthcare perspective, we always complain that kids spend too much time in front of a computer screen, they don't go out long enough and things like that. But it may not actually be a bad thing that they're spending time on the laptops, the iPads, or the computers at this point in time, because this is what their generation is going to grow up with, and this is what they're going to be exposed to. So instead of portraying that as a negative, we can actually make use of it and make use of the strength that the next generation of kids or students are good at. So, for example, at the NUS School of Medicine, we have a program called Project Horizon, where we actually use extended reality technology for undergraduate medical education for medical students and nursing students. And what we're trying to do is to leverage on their experience when it comes to digital health, digital platforms, and make it more relatable to them. So what we have done is that we have multiple sub-projects under this entire program. We have created content where medical students and nursing students can actually learn certain procedures like IV plug cannulation, drawing bloods from patients, inserting of catheters for patients, and all this is done on the extended reality platform. We use it to teach patient safety. We use it for counseling, to teach students how to counsel patients, how to break bad news, how to speak to them when they are in grief. And it's really about leveraging this technology and making use of it and drawing on its strength. Right. So, I mean, the long-term vision of what we're trying to do and what we're trying to create is that the libraries of the future, at least for the School of Medicine, it may not be just books. Right. It may be that one day a student, goes to the library and they loan a mixed reality device or extended reality device, and all the modules that's created by the school, it's uploaded onto these devices. Right. And this is what we envision, what we call directed self-learning, where the students bring the devices home, they explore the modules, they play around with it. If they want to have a collaborative session with their friends or with their tutors, they just go on the healthcare metaverse, they open up a session, they join everyone within the same environment, and they can all have essentially a classroom discussion that's more or less in person, because you see everyone as a three-dimensional hologram. Right. So I think it's up to us to really portray this as a negative or a positive, right? And how we actually use this technology to do good in our day-to-day lives. Yeah.
Privacy is fake news, and that's a good thing. I mean, we're very happy, as Pankit had said, to go on Google and see when we leave this place, is the road clogged up or not? And all of us are basically crowdsourcing that data. And as Dr. Gao mentioned, people that are studying medicine are able to go in, and if you're in an environment like this, every move you make, everything that you see is going to be captured. How quickly did you react to a particular situation? What happened? Was there a dangerous situation that you made the wrong choice in? And all that data is captured. That means that as teachers, we have more data than ever before about student engagement. Were you paying attention? No, we don't need that. Now we need to know, were you actually doing the things that we had expected? But that also means that we can see the expertise in that student. From a marketing perspective, we'll have more data than ever before about the customer. On the web, we only knew that you read the article and maybe you visited the page. On social media, we knew you shared it and reacted to it. But in this environment, we see, did you wear that particular t-shirt? And who was around you who saw you wear it? What did they then did they decide to buy? So privacy is fake news, but it means that we can delight customers like never before, and we can engage students like never before. So as Dr. Gao said, maybe it's about painting it as a good thing.
So with privacy as fake news, how about some questions from the audience? Would anyone have any questions for the panel?
Hi. Thanks for your insights to this high-tech metaverse. It's very fascinating, and yet it's a bit scary to me, because I was wondering how many hours a kid or someone who enjoying this spent in the real world versus the metaverse. And next time, maybe our conversation will be, oh, wait, did I just met you in that world or this world? It's very confusing. So, so just for fun of it, I think there are some good application, like what this gentleman from NUH has said, but it's still, there's limitation. You can operate on a patience through this space that is not real, for sure. But is that possible that the metaverse can be joined with the reality of this world and combine the two of them together? Maybe there's some hope in the medical application-wise. But yeah, thanks for your sharing, and just relate to your comments about security as well as the application. Well, yeah. And the other thing is, why is it necessary to teach a kid about buying Gucci at $1? I mean, what are you trying to achieve? You're trying to work for Gucci as an advertisement? Then I'll hire you. Thanks.
So maybe from the healthcare perspective, so like you said, there are certain restrictions and limitations, and we do recognize that as we were working over the last 1.5 to 2 years on the the HoloMedicine platform, on the healthcare metaverse, and I think it's about technology readiness and also whether or not the systems and the users are ready to accept things like that in medical practice, because the medical fraternity, by tradition, we are very careful when we adopt new technologies, new processes, new workflows. We need evidence, we need literature, we need validation studies. So it is going to take time before things like that become mainstream. But we are seeing real-world applications when it comes to technologies like this. So, for example, in the operating theater, we are actually in the process of doing studies, trials on how we can use mixed reality devices like the HoloLens 2 to help us with real-time decision making. For example, procedure navigations using patient CT scans, real-time data that's coming back from the camera feeds using computer vision, machine vision, AI that's analyzing the images in real time. So these are all experimental at this point in time. It is in the initial phases of research and development, but I think it is headed in the correct direction in the sense that we are getting more and more data when it comes to the operating space, and also in the education space when it comes to healthcare. And I think given time, this space will prove itself in healthcare. We just have to make sure that along the way we choose the right use cases, we have the right people and the right processes, workflow, data security to make sure that we don't get sidetracked in the whole process.
And to add on to the concern about kids spending too much time, well, I personally when I first found out about the metaverse, found out about Roblox, found about all these different metaverses out there, I wasn't really just a player in the metaverse. I was also a creator, and it actually stems from this perspective where if you are long enough, you want to do something. You don't just want to stay in the metaverse and just look at the stuff. You want to create stuff. You want to make stuff. And I believe that the longer you stay in the metaverse, you'll be able to pick up new skills like 3D modeling, content creation. There's so much skills that you can pick up from the metaverse just by being in it. It's not about playing games or spending too much time on your computer screen. Well, I do admit that there must be limitations to that. You can't spend 20 hours a day on your computer screen, but give them 2 or 3 hours and they will definitely pick up new skills. And who knows, it can actually help them create the metaverse and make some money out of it and build the ecosystem that the metaverse has.
Actually, just now the example Professor raised about high-end fashion brand marketing to kids. I was thinking that actually in the physical world today, there are regulations in place about marketing to children, right? And perhaps this is an example where in frontiers of technology and in innovation, the regulation has not caught up. But at some point, eventually will. That physical and virtual world, they all have to link up because at the end of the day, it is still dealing with us, individuals, real humans.
That's right. And I think as Pankit mentioned, the regulators need to wake up. But it also implies that all of us are actually in the metaverse or hanging out within this. I mean, we were joking around. Winston's taking his A-levels, and but nothing about this technology is on that, critical milestone. So what do we need to do to kind of change the way we think about things? Regulation, education, etc., all need to consider catching up.
And just to add on to that fact, I think regulation needs to be stepped up a bit. As I'm in this metaverse space and I've seen people buying $3,000 virtual Gucci bag that costs more than the real life item just to show off to your friends in the virtual space. So definitely there has to be more regulation on this part, especially from what I've seen. And it's not just me. There are people who are younger, like 10, 11 years old. They are all entrapped by all of this social media. Like they are exposed by all of these influencers and they get influenced. So regulation must be there to prevent such things from happening.
I wonder how a 10, 11-year-old gets to buy a $3,000 virtual bag. Any other questions from the audience?
So, with the introduction of the metaverse concept, will that widen the gap between the affluent versus the underprivileged side? So, as whether would this be more inclusive or will it create more divisive society? What is your view?
I think personally it will be more divisive, especially with the divide. So, as you know, to enter the metaverse, you need specific devices like VR headsets and also, a good graphics card to actually run the metaverse. And that's something that might be unaffordable to some. So definitely there will be a divide where people who cannot afford the devices to even enter the metaverse, that will be a challenge for them. So this is a barrier to entry that we all must know that this is a barrier to entry. And definitely, as time progresses, hopefully it will be cheaper. But for the current foreseeable 1 to 2 years, it might be a bit expensive. And I'm pretty sure less than 10% of you here have a VR headset, a safe assumption. But I think when the mobile phone first started out, like the iPhones or that, not many people had it, but slowly through adoption, more and more people have it. So I think now's not the time, but maybe the future is the right time.
Hello. My question is, do you see use cases for non-technical people? I could be a teacher or I could be a hospital administrator with no background in technology. Do you still have a place for people like me in the metaverse?
It's a consumer play. Actually, if you ask me, you don't need to be. Think about it. When smartphones first came, they were slightly more difficult to maneuver, but the current ones, my mom was a touch button phone person for a very, very long time. I gave her a smartphone, she opened up her Facebook account and WhatsApp. She navigates it much better than I do. She's 80-year-old, can't speak English much, but she has figured out a way. So I think the technologies will become, are fairly user-friendly enough, and the idea here is to have the experience. I mean, someone like Winston is going to create, but you're not expecting generic public to be creators. They're going to be consumers of technology. So to that degree, I'm assuming it will get to that stage of consumption more, allowing you to access. And there are use cases now in utilities, in transportation, in government services where there are use cases coming out, which means that citizens will be using it. And the expectation there will be that you are not an expert in technology, but are still going to consume it.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's about finding the right space and finding the right use cases for people to use it. So, for example, I mean, at the NUS and UHS, we have non-technologists who are using it as the end users. So we create the capabilities and abilities for them to use it. For example, we are introducing this into actually the formal curriculum for the undergraduate medical education. And our tutors, like for example, from the anatomy department, from the simulation department, they are going to use this as part of their teaching tool. So it's about making it accessible, making it easy to use, and making sure that we find the right use cases to start with. Yeah.
Have any of you looked into the potential damage that these VR devices can cause to the eyes as a result of extensive use? And if so, what has the outcome been so far, especially considering that obviously the focal point is so short? We as human species have not been designed over, through the evolution process to have our eyes and our focal points to be so short. We're made to look into the distance. So what is your opinion on that, especially given that, I hear that potentially students may be spending 6 or 8 or 10 or 12 hours a day with these devices on their faces. I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
This is again where we can't do this except for as collaboration. And so medical and the optical all need to come together. I think at first the eye doctors are going to make a lot more money from this, but then people that actually study the eye are going to be able to make very high-end lenses and what have you, that if you have a lot of money, you're going to be able to sit underneath the glass for a longer period of time. But as you go one step further, your metabolism is going to be less too. You're sitting there. You're engaging, you're running, but you're not actually running. So on the medical side, you can imagine that there'll be a metabolic drug that you take that actually emulates your running, that you're moving and so forth, so your body can stay healthy as well. So there's plenty of opportunities for medical to play a part in making the metaverse come to life.
Yeah, and to just add on to that, I think that there's no long-term data on how this will affect vision and detriments to the eye. But I think the technology itself will actually correct some of these potential side effects or potential damages. For example, when virtual reality devices started out, it is an external screen and you have to focus on external screen. And we all know that it's a very near focal length. But as the technology develops and it builds, new devices have different ways of image projection. For example, the HoloLens that we use in the hospital, they use a very different projection technology compared to the traditional AR and VR devices. What it uses is actually laser ray tracing, where it tracks the retina of the user. And it projects the image onto the retina, and it compensates for your interpupillary distance, and it compensates for your own focal length for each individual user. Right, so technically, if that's the way the image is being projected, it is no different from us looking at a real or a physical object, because that's how we perceive light, and that's how we perceive real-world images. So, and that's essentially why with new technologies like this, we find that we can use it for a longer time. The longest I've worn this device on my head was about 7 hours during a surgery. We hooked it up to a power bank. We wore it the entire surgery, and a few of my other colleagues have done so. And we don't experience the traditional visual fatigues, nausea, vomiting that we get from some of the older devices. So I think as the technology companies are aware that of the potential detriments that you mentioned about, and I think that they are trying to catch up and trying to find new ways of trying to mitigate those. But the honest truth is that because things like these are so new, we don't actually have a lot of long-term data of what this actually does. And I think that we can only know that with time.
And the device that you run is a couple $1,000s per person, whereas a typical AR headset can cost from $10 to a couple hundred. So that gap is there already.
All right. So, okay. Hello. Hi. This question is actually specifically for Dr. Gao for the holomedicine. I was thinking for this holomedicine, maybe one of the biggest benefit is being kind of like a medical hub in the region, right? So it's not just how we're going to benefit for our own patient using, around the world kind of medicinal professionals, expertise, but also how we can benefit the region, if not the rest of the world, because we have lots of surgeons, in different kind of therapeutic areas, and, we have all the professors, we have all the, so then there's probably two obstacles I can think about using for this holomedicine. One is it's very data intensive, thinking of data transformation, when you want to do the surgeon, for example, to helping some patient in the Philippines or in somewhere Vietnam, and you can, and then one is that, and the other one is the data, sharing, because I do have a friend, he actually got his own startup, kind of remote medicine, remote diagnose, but then Singapore is really well developed, so he actually want to roll out his program in this ASEAN region, but because of the data transfer and sharing, some of the regulations you have to go through and different country have a different regulation, so it's kind of difficult. So I just see what's your opinion about these two obstacles. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's the exact challenges that we're facing at this point in time. So we work with different international organizations around the world for what we call outreach programs, where we essentially use technologies like this to try and reach underdeveloped countries and areas around the world, and to try and bring the expertise to them. So I guess a bit of answering the divide question: are we increasing the divide or are we decreasing it? So how we are trying to mitigate this is that if a certain area doesn't have the infrastructure for something like this, then we can potentially bring the infrastructure to them. So drawing from the experience in Ukraine, once their internet services went down, you have someone else coming in and bringing their own infrastructure to bring it back up again. So we are in the process of organizing teams that can go around the world, and we bring the infrastructure, the hardware, the software together with them. Excuse me, and that helps to connect with the centers around the world, with the expertise that have the resources to have it in-house, right? Data security is a huge problem that we are trying to solve at this point in time, because now we are talking about real-time transfer of data. It is no longer a package that you send over an email that you can anonymize or de-identify quite easily. So how do you prevent outsiders or hackers from intercepting the feed? How do you prevent someone from mimicking a person on the other end and you think that you're communicating with the right person? How do you govern patient data being transferred across the public cloud and public internet while maintaining data security? So these are some of the real issues that we do face at this point in time, and we are trying actively to find solutions to them.
Thank you, Dr. Gao. We've ran out of time. I hope that you found the last hour interesting in terms as we look into various aspects of the metaverse, what's going on now, what may be happening soon across different sectors, as well as the kind of considerations that we should bear in mind. Thank you. If everybody please give a round of applause to thank the panel. Thank you so much.